What about you, Scott? Do you see the use of smartphones and apps where...
I got nothing, Pip. I'm not a farmer. I'm not from that background. Not from the industry. I'm from education. But thanks for the opportunity to come down here and participate in this panel. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge country, acknowledge the local Aboriginal people here. I hope I behave in a way that respects you and honours you. Just want to answer some of the questions from the first one. My thinking around social media, I think it has its place. I've sitting there alongside this fellow here and he's tweeting and carrying on here, so sometimes I think, you know, when do you get time just to be? You know, when do you get time just to sit and have nothing? I think sometimes we crowd our minds with these things and with everything else, and I think it's unhealthy. I think somewhere along the line it's going to impact on us personally big time. There's some study going on over in China with the Wallaby students. So there's some students that they researched around two groups of students. One was exposed to social media from the time they were really small to all the way up till now, so they're about 20-year-old now. And they researched another group that had no contact with social media at all. And the interesting thing they found was one group of these people that they researched had a larger brain size than the other. And the one that had the small brain were the ones that were exposed to social media all the time. Because what they found is that the part of your brain that develops as you develop socially, your empathy and all that didn't develop in these other group of people that they interviewed. So it presents a challenge, doesn't it? This thing's supposed to connect us, but in a whole lot of ways I think it disconnects us. So I think we just got to be careful where it's used, how it's used, and you know, the whole purpose of it. If it's just for information, great. If it's for communication, well, perhaps we should go back to face-to-face, because there's nothing to beat that, I believe.
I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I find Facebook more a social medium and Twitter more for work. Does anybody have a view on how they use the two things? No?
Can I pass it on to you?
No,
so what's your favourite agricultural app?
Oh, and just before we go, the other one, you're asking the questions around the year of the farmer. I kind of think, why do we have a year of the farmer? Why can't you have the day of the farmer every bloody day?
Now I tweet that, but my brain might get smaller in front of everybody. Because that's under 120 characters, so that was nice.
But it worries me that we have to have a year of the farmer, or, you know, as in my case, as an Aboriginal person, we have to have a NAIDOC week to recognise Aboriginal people. Why can't our society start to recognise and value people and what they do and all that sort of stuff? I think we've got to, you know, we've got to rethink what's going on with ourselves and in our own society.
Charlie, do you have a favourite ag app?
No, I don't, but I like the Super Rugby app. That's a good one. But in all seriousness, we do get feedback from time to time. There is some really good work that's done using this technology that we get feedback from members. And I know that GRDC's done some good work in the Weeds Identifier app, and we get some really good feedback about things like that. So it is showing that it's starting to link into some real productivity areas that have some real genuine benefits.
And on Ag Chat Oz last night, someone said that they liked Angry Birds while they were ploughing on auto steer. So it's not necessarily an ag app, but yeah. To some of the farmers on the panel, have they actually found that social media has actually helped you make more money, find contacts, get new clients?
I'm a broad-scale livestock producer, so at this stage, the response would be no. I suspect, though, if I was in a niche industry or where that connectivity with a much broader audience was critical, I could see that there'd be great benefits in it. So maybe Fleur would be able to share her ideas.
Yeah, I was just going to say we've used it to find staff or people to help on the business during busy season. Yeah, generally that's probably the main bit that we've used social media for, and obviously getting feedback on our accommodation. But in terms of our broad acre business, not so much.
Okay. What about you, Dave?
I primarily use it, and it goes back to the question before, Pip, as a news source. So it's probably become my preferred place to go to try and find news if I've been out of the loop for a little while. So no, I wouldn't say necessarily it's helped me directly in my business, but certainly in terms of keeping in touch with the news cycle, it has. And to put one back to you though, Pip, I do see at times ABC journos starting to approach people for interviews on Twitter. Is that something that you've been doing or you know of?
No, but when I was in Texas a couple of years ago, the Canadian journos that I was talking to said whenever they were doing a harvest story, they would send out tweets, and this was 4 years ago. They would send out tweets, and within 2 minutes they'd get answers back from farmers on their headers, and they would use 4 or 5 of those quotes. Bang, they had a story for radio. 8 or 10 quotes, and then they would get photos being tweeted back, and they had a newspaper story, and they just said, well, this is how we communicate with them, and they're in their header, and they like the fact that they can communicate and then see what everybody else is doing, because all farmers are nosy about what everyone else is up to. So it does strike me from one of the comments in Ag Chat Oz last night that someone said that the smartphone is just as important as a farm tool. But you can't use a smartphone if you can't get mobile service. So anyone got any views on how important it is to get decent mobile service out in the bush? That's a hospital pass, isn't it, that one?
But it does create another challenge, isn't it? There's an assumption that everybody's got access to this sort of stuff. There's also an assumption that everybody likes to do business this way. I know telecommunications might be really pushing it, and I'm pretty sure the government are too, but how does that really sit with the people on the ground? For some people, I'm sure it works really well. For others, you kind of disengage with it, and when you disengage with it, you get way behind and you miss out on a whole heap of information.
Well, Charlie, you're the policy man at NFF.
Sure. Listen, on the whole telecommunications issue, I think that is a big deal. A lot is made about, well, where to from here, what technologies to use, what role will the NBN play. I think Scott's right. I mean, there is a lot of we'll wait and see. We've heard this all before. Let's wait and see on the ground, because regional communities and our members on the ground have had a lot of problems with the service of telecommunications in many areas at many times. So that does limit some of the opportunities to engage in some of these new technologies. That's not a uniform issue, but there is, as I said, we'll wait and see. It's really good to see a lot of investment and a lot of more focus on telecommunications issues, and there's a real acknowledgement and acceptance that this is going to be a vital element for the future. But in terms of the different technologies, WiMAX, fibre to the node, fibre to the network, our guys are sitting here going, we want to see the outcomes at the end of the day, make sure that's service, that's ongoing, and it's reliable.
Okay. Well, one of the other topics we're looking at today is food linking urban and rural Australia, and I think that's a perfect time to bring Joanna in. Food tourism, what is the potential there to connect urban people with the food producers?
I think I kind of gave all my answers in one before, but clearly gastronomic tourism is a growing industry around the world. There are people, I hate to say including me, who might actually get on a plane to go somewhere for dinner, and therefore the whole notion of actually people prepared to travel for an authentic food experience. I mean, you'd all be aware of it. You do it yourselves, I'm sure, sometimes. When I was in southern France a couple of years ago, on a plane, actually, in a car that time for dinner, I was going to a 3 Michelin star restaurant in the middle of southern France, in the La Yole area, which is really in the middle of nowhere. It's a sheep farming area. You go very high up onto a plateau to find this stellar restaurant. On the way there, on the highway, and it brings me back to my McDonald's comment before, there was a place that you could stop to get a refreshment or have lunch. It was actually a purpose-built cafeteria and information centre that talked about the produce of the region. It was one of those interactive centres where you could see all the different fruits and berries and plants of the region that were quite unique to this part of France. And the menu at the cafeteria had been designed by this 3 Michelin star chef. So you could actually taste snack foods. They weren't, 3 Michelin star, $100 euro meals. These were very simple things, but they were designed by this chef who specialises in using the foods of his region. Now, I realise Australia has a different story when it comes to agriculture and the food that we produce, but nonetheless, each region of Australia does have its own unique characteristics and foods that are special to those regions. And clearly it's about being able to showcase them in some equally authentic way. That's what struck me particularly about that French experience, that it wasn't someone in the tourism office who had some smart idea, let's, get local caterer on board and just put a few things on and just say this is the local Wagyu or the local lamb. They actually drew on the talents and the, a selling point of that region, which was this restaurant and this chef. And in fact, I don't know there are very many parts of rural Australia that have a 3 Michelin star chef in them. So obviously you're looking at something else. But very quickly, one other thing that we did for the Crave Sydney International Food Festival this year was invite 5 regional New South Wales teams to come to Sydney to present a lunch for 100 people each. Between the 5 of them, that was a lunch for 500. What happened through that process was that we called it the 100-mile meal, because 160 k's doesn't sound quite so sexy. And we asked them to source all the produce from within 160 kilometres. And these were TAFE students, hospitality students, commercial cookery students, agricultural students, working with local food producers. Because of the challenge of finding produce that was produced within that radius, the kids at TAFE actually had to go out and see who was doing what in their area, and then the local chefs and restaurants came on board to mentor the kids and bring the whole menu together. It was an extraordinary, and ABC Local Radio got involved as well and sort of shepherded and championed each region one against the other. We had a little bit of a cook-off in Sydney at Everleigh Railway Yards Carriage Works in Redfern. It was an amazingly emotional and beautiful moment because you actually saw the connections that had been created in each of those regions, and then the fruit of those connections coming to Sydney. And it's something we're planning to repeat this year. But I suppose the point of the story is look at what you've got, as I said before, where you are, and create those authentic networks and create something that is yours and something that you can not only show off to people where you are, but that you can actually, given the chance, bring to the city.